Welcome back. We just wanted to appreciate what the African Anti-Corruption Day is all about. And for us to be able to appreciate what the African Anti-Corruption Day is, I'm going to invite Mr. Elik Gumbi to just briefly tell us what is this African Anti-Corruption Day. Mr. Gumbi, kindly tell us what is African Anti-Corruption Day.
The Africa Anti-Corruption May I use this one? Yes. Okay, thank you very much. The Africa Anti-Corruption Day is a day that has been designated for the countries that are member states to the Africa Convention on Prevention and Combating of Corruption to take stock of the gains that have been made in the fight against corruption. That convention, that is the African Union Convention on the Prevention and Combating Corruption, is a convention that has been ratified by various African states. So Kenya is one of those countries that have ratified that convention, and the purpose of this day is for those countries to come together and reflect on the progress that has been made in the implementation of that convention. The convention provides for member states to establish mechanisms for the effective detection, prevention, and the punishment of corruption. So in Kenya, this day was meant to be commemorated yesterday, just like in other countries, but we moved this one to today because of the public holiday that we had yesterday. Most importantly, the theme for Kenya is slightly different. It has been modified to capture the current circumstances in the country. That is the upcoming election. So for that reason, we have the theme of election of leaders of integrity, and this is informed by the centrality of electoral integrity in governance. So we are calling upon Kenyans to elect men and women of integrity to public office come 9th August 2022. So that is what we are doing as a country, to commemorate the Africa Anti-Corruption Day through sensitization of members of the public to take it upon themselves to elect men and women of integrity to public office. That is what I could say, Mr. Moy.
Thank you for that clarification. At this point, I want to invite Mr. Vincent Okongo, the Director of Preventive Services, EACC, to tell us what is the integrity threshold. When we say we want leaders of integrity, Lily, what do we require of these leaders?
Thank you, Mr. Mue. The threshold that is set out for leaders of integrity are prescribed in Chapter 6 of our Constitution, and much more specifically Article 73, that talks about suitability, competence, and election in a fair process. And that is why it is very important for Kenyans, when they are electing leaders of integrity, that they have a process that is integral. Secondly, that they put in place people who have the knowledge, have the skills, have the capacity, and the experience to execute this very important task of representation and leadership. And finally, the whole question of suitability. People who lack integrity do not deserve to serve in public offices. It is a key requirement of that provision of the law and the Constitution, and we call upon Kenyans to assess the suitability of the candidates that have offered themselves for this particular office. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Okongo, for that in-depth clarification on what we require of our leaders. It is important as we prepare for the elections to know that the citizens have a critical role to play. Various laws have been put in place, but the final goalkeeper is the citizens. They have the constitutional responsibility to elect leaders, and therefore leaders who may not meet the threshold provided under the Constitution. It is a call for the citizens to plug those leaders and make the right decision, knowing that once they entrust them with public office, they are likely not to live up to the tenets of the requirements of Chapter 6 of the Constitution, and at the end of the day, the public will suffer once we entrust power with the wrong people. At this point, I want to bring another question, and I want to bring one of our partners, the Kenya Revenue Authority, because for us to be able to develop our country, we need resources, and we know the Kenya Revenue Authority is the body mandated with the responsibility of collecting revenue. What we want to understand what has been put in place so that this can enhance revenue collection for purposes of developing our country once we have the right leaders in place. Kindly share with us what the Kenya Revenue Authority is doing to enhance integrity thresholds for the various entities you interact with. Kindly, first of all, introduce yourself, then you just tell us what KRA is doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here on behalf of the Kenya Revenue Authority. My name is Dr. Mugambi Mwirigi, and I'm a commissioner at the Kenya Revenue Authority. And we are really excited to be here to commemorate this very important day. There's a lot that we are doing. You might have noticed is that our revenue collection has jumped from 1.6 trillion to just over 2 trillion in the last 1 year. The revenue leakages and other malpractices have been brought significantly down. And one of the things that we are doing is enhancing our investments in technology platforms to ensure that there is very little, human intervention between the taxpayer and the authority, so that then we remove all those people who might come in between trying to play brokerage roles between the taxpayer and the authority. We have put in place various integrity programs, sensitizations of all our staffs. We have enhanced the threshold of accountability so that then people are held to very high account, including, of course, not just losing jobs when they are caught in some of these malpractices, but also going to court. And it is evident that working with the Anti-Corruption Commission, we have even supported efforts where some properties have been, frozen, including bank accounts. And so there is quite a lot that we are doing, and we'll continue doing this. We call on the public to ensure that the resources that we collect are not wasted, because I think the challenge is no longer how far we can go in terms of collection, but it is about how those resources are then spent, so that then we do not see a lot of leakage and wastage in the application of the resources that are collected. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Mugambi, for that in-depth information. At this point, allow me to ask Mr. Eric Ngumbi, the head of corporate communication in Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, whether there is a link between elections and corruption? And if there is, what is the link? And what is the Commission doing to deal with that relationship? Thank you, Mr. Ngumbi. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mwe. What you have said is indeed true, that there exists a nexus between corruption and elections. And I want to begin with a very simple point. What would be the logic of a person to seek an elective office and while doing so, spend an amount of money in the campaigns that is way beyond the total amount of salary or benefits that one would get for the entire term? That is one question that one ought to ask themselves. So in short, and from our experience as a commission, corruption has characterized most of the malpractices that you see in elections. People loot public resources which they use to bribe voters with a view to getting elected. And this is very important. The question of voters understanding that the money that they are bribed with is actually their money is an important question. Because unless and until citizens begin to realize that these people who engage in corruption use that money to buy their votes and therefore steal their future, then they may not be able to understand where we are coming from when we are asking them to reject people who are corrupt. So that link is there, and some of those people who loot resources endeavor to also get to office and steal more to compensate themselves. So what is important is for citizens to realize that corruption is responsible for the challenges that they face today. If somebody comes seeking to buy your vote, you ought to say no. We have to reject voter bribery, because if these individuals finally get elected, they will engage in corruption, they will frustrate processes that are aimed at enhancing accountability. These are people who are expected to enact laws for protection of public funds. If they have already engaged in corruption, they will not do that, because nobody would want to put in place mechanisms that will frustrate the desire that they have. So in short, citizens have a responsibility to discharge the duty that the Constitution has assigned them, and that is to be active participants and not spectators in governance processes. Under Article 1 of the Constitution, all sovereign power is vested in the people. But citizens must realize that this power cannot operationalize itself. Certain actions are required on the part of citizens for them to enjoy that status of sovereign people. We cannot say that we are sovereign when, instead of delegating our authority and monitoring how it is exercised, we surrender the same to politicians. Ordinarily, and in civilized nations, it is politicians who follow the people. But what we see in Kenya is the citizens following politicians and surrendering the sovereign power that has been given by the Constitution to them. August 9th presents a critical opportunity that the people of Kenya need to utilize to determine how they want their affairs managed. If we want good governance post-August 9th, we must vote wisely. Voting wisely in this context means voting for people who have integrity and people who have demonstrated that they can be trusted with the management of public affairs. If we elect people with the corruption tag, certainly they cannot be expected to prudently manage public resources. We cannot expect any accountability from them. And it is even more dangerous if you elect to high office persons who may not command the moral authority that is required to lead all the other leaders in an effective fight against corruption. Thank you, Mr. Moy.
Thank you for that information. At this point, I want to bring this short discussion to an end as we prepare for the main panel discussion, which I will be introducing the moderator shortly, Professor Macharia Munene. But at this point, as we set up for that, I want to invite Mangilenso to give us an interlude.
Good morning. I'm going to present a song called Tuangamize Ufisadi, Tudumishe Uadilifu. Karibuni. Yatupasa tuungane, kwa pamoja tusimame, tudumishe uadilifu, twaweza sote, tuijenge nchi yetu, tuangamize ufisadi, sisi sote kwa pamoja tunaweza. Twaweza kudumisha uadilifu, twaweza kuangamiza ufisadi, twaweza. Kwani hii ni nchi yetu, na sisi ni wenye nchi, tuungane na tudumishe uadilifu. Nasema Kenya ni nchi yetu, na sisi ni wenye nchi, tuungane na tudumishe uadilifu. Pamoja twaweza kudumisha uadilifu, twaweza kuangamiza ufisadi, twaweza kudumisha uadilifu, twaweza kuangamiza ufisadi, twaweza. Thank you.
Next, we are going to have a panel discussion, and our panelist for today will be moderated by Professor Macharia Munene. And I want to introduce Professor Macharia Munene. Professor, you can take your seat, the middle of the audience, of the panelists. Our moderator today, Professor Macharia Munene, calls himself a Kenyan child from Murang'a County. He obtained his PhD in diplomatic history from Ohio University in Athens, Ohio, USA. He is a teacher at the United States University, Africa. He has also taught at the University of Nairobi, Kenyatta University, Moi University, the National Defense College, among other higher institutions of learning. Professor Munene was recognized as a UN expert on decolonization. He is in the top 100 CCTV world commentators. He is a public intellectual. He appears in the Kenyan and global media forums as an observer, commentator, and analyst. He often is invited to moderate and facilitate functions or make presentations in local and international institutions. Professor Munene has published widely in books, journals, magazines, and newspapers. He has served as a weekly newspaper columnist on topical and historical issues since 2007. He is affiliated to a number of global institutions in the past and the present. One being the Global Center for Public Policy, is an affiliate. The ON Institute for Strategic Studies, the Harmony Institute of Nairobi. He has been recasting Mau Mau research projects, among other works of intellectual nature. So Professor Munene is today with us to moderate this panel discussion, in which he will have 4 panelists. Dr. Monica Muiru, the Vice Chair of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, Madam Sheila Masinde, the Executive Director, Transparency International, Mr. David Omoyo, the Chief Executive Officer, Media Council of Kenya, and Dr. Catherine Dean, a senior faculty at Strathmore University. At this point, I want to hand over to our moderator, Professor Macharia Munene, to continue with the panel discussions.
Hello. Thank you very much. We have a good, distinguished people representing 4 distinguished institutions. The Anti-Corruption Authority itself, the Transparency International, the Media Council, and our host, Strathmore University. Let me read something about each of the panelists, and then we shall give them each 10 minutes to tell us what they want to tell us. And then we shall have an open session where people can raise questions or ask, make comments regarding what has been said or not said. Let me start with Dr. Monica Wanjiru Muiru on my right. Dr. Muiru is a commissioner at the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. She's held that position since December 2021. Dr. Muiru is a trained, experienced, and internationally exposed business professional and an academic scholar. Has many years of experience in accounting, finance management, leadership, customer service, teaching across banking, media, higher education, government and technology sectors. She previously worked for the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation, the East African Standard, the Mellon Bank in Pittsburgh, USA, and the Mortient Corporation, Reston, Virginia, USA. Dr. Moiro has been guest speaker, facilitator, and lecturer at various universities, including Calvert Stockton College in USA, Continental College, St. Paul's University, Emmanuel Christian College, Copenhagen Business School, Austria Learning, and at Egerton University, where she currently teaches finance and accounting to both undergraduate and graduate students. She supervises graduate students in their theses. She has undertaken various consultancy engagements in the fields of financial management. She has done research and published several articles in peer-reviewed journals. Dr. Moiro was the recipient of the prestigious H.J. Heinz International Fellowship Program at the University of Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania, where she took courses at Graduate School of Public and International Affairs, and at the Joseph M. Katz Graduate School of Business. She is a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Marketing, a member of Zonta International, and associate member of the American Chartered Institute of Accounting. Dr. Moiro brings on a wide array of skills and experience to the EACC. Welcome, Dr. Moiro. Just raise your hand.
Thank you very much.
Next, let me go through all of them so that when we start, it's just go. Yeah, I have a good list here. Sheila Masinde. Now, Sheila Masinde is the Executive Director of Transparency International Kenya. She has 19 years work experience in governance, program management, media, and outreach. She is currently the Executive Director of Transparency International Kenya, having served as Programs Manager, Head of Programs between 2015 and 2020. She joined Transparency International Kenya for the second time in 2014 as Research and Learning Manager. She had been from BBC, Media Action, Corporation's International Development Charity, where she was the Communications and Training Manager. She first worked for Transparency International Kenya from 2009 to 2012 as the Advocacy and Communications Program Officer. She has also worked at the Nation Media Group in the radio and online news sections, and also at I Choose Life Africa as Assistant Program Manager. Transparency International Kenya is a not-for-profit organization and an autonomous chapter of the Transparency International Movement, a global coalition against corruption. Transparency International Kenya's vision is that of a corruption-free Kenya. The TI Kenya has been at the forefront of the fight against corruption and governance reforms, supporting citizens, public institutions, and the private sector to effect transparency and accountability since 1999. Transparency International has been a member of the CLIF, having been the civil society sector liaison since 2018. Raise your hand, Sheila. Next. Mr. David Omwayo, Media Council of Kenya. He's the Chief Executive Officer. Mr. David Omwayo is the current Chief Executive Officer of the Media Council of Kenya, the national regulator of Kenya's vibrant media sector. He has over 15 years' experience in journalism, media training and management, spanning the public, private, religious, and non-governmental sectors. He has previously served as Managing Director of Waumini Communications and Communications Director for the Kenya Conference of the Catholic Bishops. Mr. Omwayo has also worked as in academia's fundraising and donor relations manager at Egerton University, with the responsibility for institutional advancement and donor relations. He holds a Master's of Arts degree in communications from the University of Leicester in England. He has researched and written on, among other things, the role of vernacular media in funding ethnic animosity during the 2007-2008 election violence. The challenges and opportunities in Africa's different regulation models. Mr. Omwayo is passionate about developing new models to sustain public interests, media as a way of ensuring media freedom, independence, and self-regulation, which has defined his work at the Media Council of Kenya. Welcome, Mr. Omwayo. Let's raise your hand. And finally, we have a representative of Strathmore University. So it's referred to as the senior profile. Dr. Catherine Dean is a senior lecturer in philosophy and ethics at the School of Humanities and Social Sciences, Strathmore University. She is also a senior faculty member at Strathmore University Business School. Dr. Dean has taught diverse philosophy and ethics units to undergraduate and master's students at Strathmore University since 2004. Dr. Dean holds a BA in English Literature and Economics from the University College, Dublin, which makes her Irish, since 1988. She holds a postgraduate diploma in accounting, Dublin City University, 1989. A master's in systemic theology from Pontifical University of the Holy Cross, Rome, Italy, 1992. And a PhD in education research, Dublin City University, Ireland, 2013. Her doctoral research was inspired by her efforts to enhance the teaching and learning experience of her students using action research living theory. Along with her teaching responsibilities, Dr. Dean supervises and examines postgraduate students at the School of Humanities and Social Sciences. She has conducted certified ethics training and is an ethics reviewer for the Strathmore University Institutional Ethics Review Committee. Throughout her career, Dr. Dean has published several articles, book chapters, and book reviews, as well as presented academic papers in international conferences. Her fields of research interest are applied philosophy and ethics, human freedom and dignity, and ethical leadership. Dr. Dean contributes to the broader community by facilitating training in teaching and learning strategies for primary and secondary school teachers. She also mentors young professional women on a voluntary basis. Welcome, Dr. Dean. Now, with those introduction of this distinguished panel, we are ready to listen to them, but let me just say one small thing. And since I see somebody who wrote to the Pontifical, about 1600 years ago, Aurelia Augustine, better known as St. Augustine, noted something peculiar, that there never lacks a number of people who are always willing to do wrong things deliberately. They know it's wrong, not out of ignorance, but they do it anyway. Or they go out and provoke people. So our panel, I think, might try to address that. How do you deal with people who knowingly, deliberately engage in the wrong things, especially at this time of election? Start with you, Dr. Moiro. 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. That is a good question. And as human beings, sometimes we tend not to address the right things. But the gist of it is we need to, if you notice somebody is not behaving in the normally accepted way, the best thing is to guide them. And that is why we are celebrating this day about anti-corruption, because we know corruption is about unethical behavior, is about people taking advantage of public resources for their own benefits. They deny people their rightful benefits, and therefore, if somebody is not behaving ethically, the best thing is to guide them, to show them the right way. And that is why today we are preaching the gospel of erecting readers of ethical with ethics, so that we can have integrity, in accountability, so that we can have good country where there's prosperity and good social public utilities. That is the way I can address that. Shira?
Comments. Thank you very much, Prof, and my co-panelists and others who have spoken before us, or other guests, and the audience here and also watching us from TV. It is a great pleasure to be part of this commemoration, particularly on this year as we prepare for the general elections. We're just exactly 4 weeks away to the elections, and looking at the theme where we are talking about electing leaders of integrity, because for sure we are concerned about the caliber and the character of individuals who have populated our leadership scene and are now talking to us about getting either elected for the first time or re-elected into different offices. And for me, this theme is very, very critical, and the topics that we have spoken about today, and even the presentation by Archbishop of the ACK Church, Dr. Jackson Olesapit, in regard to leadership and integrity. So it comes at a good point. For us, as a Transparency International Kenya, as I sit here, I also represent civil society, which has worked on trying to mobilize Kenyans and educate them on the importance of leadership and integrity as articulated in Chapter 6 of the Constitution. We have what we call the National Integrity Alliance, and we've been out in the last few months just looking at what are our institutions, what have they documented in regard to people who have been found culpable or have been accused of corruption, people who have been taken to court, named by either the EACC, the Office of the Auditor General in terms of use of public resources, named in parliamentary committees and so on. And from that work, we actually published a list of 25 individuals, which we call the red card list, of people we believe should not be given another opportunity to hold public office because they have already breached public trust. And when you look at Chapter 6 of the Constitution, it is very clear that anyone who holds public office is one who attracts public confidence. Therefore, someone who has been accused of corruption or any other offense is not one who attracts public confidence or trust in that office and actually demeans that office. If you look at Article 75(1) of Chapter 6, which talks about what we expect from people holding public office, they should not be people who have demeaned. And for us, the moment you have been accused of corruption or any other offense, it means that you have cast aspersions on your ability, and as such, until one is clear, then they should not, either if that matter has gone to the court, then they should not have any access to public office. But other than that, we also believe that as we continue to talk about Chapter 6, we need to understand that Chapter 6 is coming from an ethical and moral perspective, and it is good we are here in an institution that is supported by the church, and some of my co-panelists, starting with Omoyo, have worked very closely with church institutions, going to Dr. Dean as well, so they understand this, that there's something moral and ethical that we should expect from or rather consider as we choose leaders. And therefore, someone who already has doubts cast on their character, it means that they may not fit the moral and ethical requirements that our Constitution requires. If you look at Article 93 and 199, it says that one needs to fulfill certain ethical, moral, and educational qualifications to be able to serve in public office. Once there are doubts in regard to your ability to satisfy us morally and ethically, then it means then you cannot hold or even be cleared to vie for office. And that is really where we are coming from. We believe that Chapter 6 has been misinterpreted, it has been misapplied, because we are looking at it from a criminal threshold. And so that is what we have applied, standards of criminality. But yet, we should be coming from an ethical and moral point of view. And that is why we seem to be stuck, and yet I think it's very clear on the ethical and moral requirements that need to be served by our leaders before they get into office. And that's simply what we are stating. For us as civil society, what we have tried to do in this last few years, and particularly intensified in the last few months, is take up some actions to ensure that those we have said and assessed are not fit to hold public office are not given that through pass to public office. We have undertaken public interest litigation. We had a matter in the High Court, which was judged in the last, I think, 3 or so weeks, which did not really go in the public's favor, because what we sought is that certain people should be blocked from vying from office, and we also sought that EACC should be declared the custodian of Chapter 6, because right now there seems to be it's almost not so clear who is responsible for Chapter 6, who is responsible for ensuring enforcement and compliance of Chapter 6 of the Constitution. And if we don't have that clarity, then it means that Chapter 6 will always remain unimplemented, because we have not granted the right institution, which is responsible for that, the mandate to do that. And we sought clarity from the court. who is responsible for Chapter 6. In our own assessment and reading of the Constitution, that should be EACC. If you look at Article 79 of the Constitution, the other thing that we also sought to clarify is what standard should be applied, as I've spoken about. Is it the moral and ethical standard or the criminal standard? We believe it's a moral and ethical standard. The court, throughout those particular petitions, or several petitions, not just from civil society, but many other Kenyans, which tells you that many Kenyans are concerned about the quality of leadership and the fact that many corrupt individuals and others who are not suitable for public office continue to occupy these spaces, and that is why a number of cases were actually taken up by citizens. So we are looking at that particular ruling and trying to see what is the next best way forward, but we believe that we will continue, Aluta continue, we are not giving up. The other actions that we are particularly also undertaking at this time is social vetting. Our institutions have failed in regard to ensuring that people who are not suitable for office are stopped. We started with the courts, asking the courts to ensure that some of these cases are decided way before the elections, because we've seen politicians hold on to Article 99 and 193 of the Constitution, which allows them, to be cleared until, their cases are concluded and until they've exhausted all appeal mechanisms. And so what we ask the court is, can we ensure that these cases are actually concluded so that come elections, all possible appeal mechanisms have been exhausted? Well, that hasn't happened. The corruption cases are taking a bit of time in terms of hearing and determination. And after that, we also called on to our political parties, ensure, even according to the Political Parties Act, which requires political parties also to vet the people vying in accordance to the Chapter 6 of the Constitution, to ensure that these people are stopped. Political parties didn't do that. We expected our institutions to also support EACC, despite submitting a list of 241 names to IEBC. I think IEBC only cleared, agreed to not clear, was it about 6 people, some of whom I know have since appealed and have gotten other outcomes from the court. And now we are left with the citizens as the last line of defense in regard to Chapter 6. And that is, I believe, why we're here, to appeal to citizens that come August 9th, let us reject anyone who has been mentioned in any corruption case or any other offense, and ensure that we clean up our leadership, because as Archbishop Emeritus has said, that our only path to continue transparency and accountability in this country is if we elect leaders of integrity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Moyo, what can the media do?
That question comes all the time, but those of you who were around in the Kibaki days and would have floods in certain parts of Western, and there was a certain face who would come and say, serikali saidia, and one day Kibaki asked him, na wewe unajisaidia namna gani? The media can only write or highlight, and the media has not failed to highlight cases of corruption, breaches of trust, and unconduct. But what we do, in extreme cases, we have supporters of the people written about attacking media. But otherwise, we have the people written about getting elected by the same people, because journalists will not arrest. They can only put a story out. And we have had a fair share of major disclosures on media, electronic and print and other media, and nothing happened. The media cannot arrest. The media cannot organize a protest. So I think the media, the best they can do is bring to light what we think is ethical or misconduct or violations of the law, so that the right people should act. And the layers of acting are, we call them duty bearers. Is it either the police? Is it EACC? Or, is it the churches? Is it NGOs, where we also find ourselves in from time to time? Or is it the citizens? And we say that sometimes the citizens, which, as Sheila says, is the last line of defense, in a few cases they go and attack the media for writing about their people. You are writing about our thief. He's a thief, but he's our thief, so tutafukuza nyinyi hapa. So what can the media do? So as we continue engaging this, I think it's about the ecosystem of ethics and anti-corruption fight. And if anyone in the entire ecosystem drops the ball, we will have either the media wasting acres of newspaper space and airtime, or have ESCC sending recommendations to people who ignore, or have NGOs like Sheila in town doing a lot of demonstrations and helping the police deplete their stock of tear gas and batons and dogs, and nothing happening. So I think the whole idea of a cliff was about getting everybody appreciating their role in the value chain and agreeing that when this person has set the ball rolling, someone must take it out, and then eventually we must reach a point and ask who in the ecosystem is dropping the ball. I know absolutely we will have to tell wananchi hata nyinyi mnatuchezea sana, because they say hata media itusaidii, but then after media has written they say hii media inaandika vibaya kuhusu watu wetu. But then we have those of us who will say the formal duty bearers who have work to do, and we seem to be determined either not to investigate or deliberately to ignore everything said of us and then say the media has let people down. So, well, yes, the media has a role to highlight, but a quick research will show you that perhaps every week we will have no less than 30 to 40 cases of misconduct or violation of ethics. And every week we will have no more than 0 of no action from other actors. Over time, hata mtu anaandika atachoka. So really it's about no single person in the ecosystem can succeed to enforce ethics and integrity until everyone acts around. I mean, we are here discussing. I'm lucky that my boss, Dr. Obukala, is chair here. And you have had murmurs about, we think the churches should stop receiving something because we don't know where it has come from. It's because we think that ethics, as she said, is not legal, it's not criminal, it's about reflections and all that. And what values are we putting in people now? We have reached the level where you get an accident, the first responders will rob you. The first thing they do is rob you, take everything, and leave you dying. When did we get that low? You see an accident, and I forget about the cars that are carrying some products from Ruaraka, even cars carrying foodstuff and gas cylinders and petrol. The drivers and the other people will be screaming for help. And guys there who fill our churches every Saturday and Sunday, who sit in such forums, are scrambling to carry something. It's impossible to criminalize that because you will not have cells to do all that. And the media can only highlight that is what people did. So we need to have a lot of soul searching and reflect, so that then you tell the media, what you are doing is not enough, you can do more. But if the media comes here and we can quickly table facts to show that we had, say, 70 ethics and anti-corruption stories in the past 1 month, and from them follow-up shows 0 action was done by any of the duty bearers. And if we elected maybe 50 elected officials, wananchi went and elected 49 out of the 50 of them, and that one who was not elected was because he did not share the loot with wananchi. So really it goes back to us about reflection and the roles of each one. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Dean, you are the philosopher in the room. What do you have to say?
Thank you very much, Professor Monene. We've been hearing very interesting reflections and considerations about the state of the situation as we're moving towards our elections next month. The thoughts that we heard from the keynote speaker and other speakers have been very helpful in terms of giving us the picture of what we're trying to do to fight corruption here in Kenya. And my fellow panelists here have also been quite specific about what different institutions are trying to do to contribute to this fight. There are a couple of things that I'd like to throw out there as thoughts, maybe, and partly also in response to your initial question. Why do people do what they know is wrong? Yeah. So maybe the very first disclaimer I'd like to make as a philosopher is that ethics and moral standards are not a question of faith. Although we do make use of faith-based resources sometimes, to support ethical claims. What ethics is about is human actions, and trying to evaluate the goodness or badness of those actions, even just based on what's good for us as human beings. And this brings us, in an attempt to reply to your initial question, why do we sometimes act badly, even though we know it's not good? Well, the reason is quite straightforward. The way we're made as human beings is that when we do something, it's because we perceive there's something good in it for us, basically, So whether it's drinking a bit of water, it's because you perceive that you need the water. It's good for your body to drink water, so you drink it, If you steal from your neighbor, it can be for many reasons. Maybe you want to get back on your neighbor for something that he or she did to you. And why are you doing that? Well, because you perceive that you'll get something out of that action. Maybe it's just satisfying your desire for revenge. Or if you're the one stealing, it could be simply because you don't have enough food. And so you perceive that taking that food is good for me because I need it, At a larger level, if I'm in a position of public office, and there's a budget assigned to my department, and I can find ways of managing that budget so that a good bit of it goes into my own personal bank account, why would I do it? There's something good in it for me, So this is a human dilemma, a question in a sense, Also, okay, so I act and I do things because I perceive there's something good in it for me. Why do I engage in bribery or any other form of corruption? Because I'll benefit from it in one way or another. So now the question needs to go a bit deeper. And my colleague here spoke about reflection. If we're talking ethics is about human actions, who is the one that's acting? It's a person, isn't it? So what we're trying to think about here, particularly from Strathmore University, as we're educating our students at all levels in ethical issues, is not just to try to understand, okay, what ethical reference points do we have that can help us to make judgments about the kind of actions that we should or shouldn't carry out, but above all, what kind of person do I want to be? If my free actions, if I choose to act in one way because I perceive it's good for me, okay, so what's the impact on me of that action? So, for example, if I tell a lie, and I tell a lie again and again and again, what kind of a person do I become? How would you describe me? Tell me.
Just a liar.
As a liar, So you see, the repeating acts of lying makes you as a person become a liar. So now, when you stop and think in your own inner room, do you want to be a liar? Not even what society thinks about liars or doesn't think about them. Do you really want to be a liar? So if we're concerned about, let's say, lack of ethics and lack of ethics across institutions, we need to remember that those institutions are made up of people, individuals, each one of us. And if there's a problem at a higher level or at a lower level, in the end, it's a problem about individuals. So for me, I think a lot of it is how can we help people to want to be the best possible version of themselves as human beings, aware that they're not existing in some kind of a vacuum, but we form part of a community. And we're very aware of that here, We have smaller communities and bigger communities. So, as a human being, I cannot exist by myself, I need other people, I need my family members, I need the lady at the kiosk who's selling bread, because I need the bread to eat, So, as an individual, thinking about the kind of person I want to be as part of the community that I form part of. And here again, we need to think that the community is not just my village, it's not just my ethnic community, it's my country, it's the global, international community. Yeah, we were talking about use of resources, yeah, and resources for the future of Kenyans, and how are we using resources for the future of humanity? So, here at Strathmore, when we do talk about ethics with our students, we try to help them to think about their actions and the kind of persons that they want to become, yeah, what they want to be known for the good that they have done to their community and to the broader community. So that's our role in a sense, yeah. And that is where I think that one of the ways of trying to address the concerns that we're talking about today is going back to education and the quality of education and the kind of education that we're offering to our young people. We're talking about voters, and that in a sense the buck stops with voters. And of course it's true, but the voters are individuals. We as voters are individuals, yeah? So we need to think, as a voter, I have a choice to make, a free choice to make, but I need to make that choice in a responsible manner. Who am I thinking about? It's true, the temptation might be to think just about my own village, but there's more to us than that. My village can't stand without all the other villages. Yeah? My community can't exist without all the other communities. So it's like trying to broaden our vision and understanding of who we are as individuals and who we want to be as persons and who we want to be as members of our community and how we want to help our community at the smaller level and at the bigger level to grow and develop. So when we're thinking about the people that we want to elect, can they be people who are going to, first of all, build Kenyans? More even than building Kenya, are they people who will build Kenyans? And thinking also about how are we preparing now for the possible candidates in the elections 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I was tempted to give them another round, but we've got the audience. And then we shall give them a chance to wrap up. So first of all, if you are going to make a comment or raise a question, make it short so that you can have as many people as possible to express themselves or ask. So the floor is open. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. My name is David Gadhi. I work for the National Anti-Corruption Campaign Steering Committee. I want to thank the panelists, I think, for their insights. And I think they have made very good comments on the reflection that you gave them. We are heading to the general election. And I think the structure of this country is that we are so reliant on our leaders. So if we get the wrong people inside there, then we are going to have problems. But for me, I don't want to focus on this one. I want to focus in the future. But before I make that comment, I wanted to ask the CEO of the Media Council, and first of all, thank the media, because anytime a corrupt person is being taken to court, the media is there. We see it on TV, on the newspapers, and so on. I wanted to encourage the media, please follow up on the progress of the case and report so that citizens can keep up with what is going on with that particular individual. Mostly you hear Kenyans saying, once it's taken to court, the case dies. So because there is no feedback on what is going on. And that way, maybe you also reverse the issue of accountability, because if we keep on postponing, adjourning, I think that's the correct term, of the case of an individual, then the citizens will start asking, but why is this case always adjourned? Is there something, you know? But in terms of the fight against corruption and the election of the leaders of integrity, we are faced with a quagmire where Kenyans will either look at the ethnic community, the village, as Daktari says, or whatever it is, those considerations that have nothing to do with integrity. That is exacerbated by institutions that should be speaking to Chapter 6 of the Constitution and other articles, not speaking the same language. I was just wondering, and I think this is for the panelists. Supposing maybe immediately after the general election, we don't wait for the next one, we start immediately. We bring in all these institutions that have something to do with the enforcement or application of Chapter 6. And we start a discussion so that the courts, the judiciary will tell us, if you want us to help in this Chapter 6, then we need 1, 2, 3. IEBC also comes and says, for us to be able to help and contribute to the enforcement and application of Chapter 6, we need 1, 2, 3. And the others, the EACC and all the other institutions. So that from maybe that meeting, we can speak with one language, and we all expect to follow the same road as long as certain ingredients are. So thank you very much.
Next. Over there.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Professor Festus from Kenyatta University, Department of Literature. I just have a few comments which I want to make about what this panel discussed briefly. I think the reason as to why we have this problem of corruption is because of how our society has been structured. It's the citizens who create actually leaders. In our political system, there's this saying that politics is equal to money and money is power, and that power equals to leadership. When our wananchi go for elections, there is even this saying in Kiswahili, ya kwamba huyo hana kitu. So they cannot elect somebody that they see has nothing to show. So once a politician gets into power, the first thing they do is they go into thieving so that they become powerful with a lot of resources, lands, a lot of money and all this. And then there's this problem of tribe. We can even see at the higher level. When Ruto and Raila, when they were choosing running mates, what did we see? We saw actually what we call tribal realignments. Somebody chooses a running mate from a big tribe, which is the Kikuyu, because they know they will get more votes. It's not a question of policy or what they will do for the country. And it is because of a problem of the tyranny of numbers and numerical dictatorship. So the question of integrity does not even show up in that area. Is the bravery of voters. I don't know if we have a law in Kenya that is can arrest politicians. Even until now, people are being called into secret meetings and they are being given money. And there is this saying that if we want to fail as a politician, stop giving people handouts. And people are getting money. So do we have a law in this country that can actually even prosecute politicians who are behaving in this manner? So when we talk about integrity, are we considering these factors? And then another problem is the kind of civic education that we are giving to our citizens. For example, do we have a system whereby our citizens can be educated on choice of leaders with integrity, who are big people with a lot of money and estates. And I think if we have a system that can educate even the people at the grassroots, it is important. Because people are looking at who is driving which car. If you come here with a motorbike, you cannot be elected. You need to drive a big car. And where do these people get these resources? It's because they want to become big, so they start stealing. Huh? And another thing is, about the people who developed Marxism. They said that those people who are in leadership, that's material dialectics. Those people who are in leadership, they don't deserve it.